Why do we teach men that chasing is noble, but disappearing is weak? What if the truth is the opposite? What if real strength isn't found in pursuit, but in restraint? See, a masculine man doesn't chase chaos. He doesn't beg for attention. He recognizes when his presence is no longer valued, and he walks away without fanfare. That isn't apathy, that's clarity. That's self-respect forged in suffering. Because a man who's done the inner work understands this. Energy is currency, and he refuses to spend it on someone who cannot see his worth. This isn't a game, it's a spiritual boundary. And the man who can walk away, not out of anger, but out of principle, is the man who commands respect. Not just from others, but from himself. So the question is not, how do I make her stay? The real question is, why am I still chasing someone who would let me disappear? That's where this begins. And it might just change your life. Why is it that the more you chase someone, the faster they run? Let me ask you something even more disturbing. Why are so many men today willing to betray themselves for the hope of affection? Think about that. Not love, not commitment, not respect, hope. That's what a man trades his soul for now, hope. Of what? A message? A returned call? A glance that says, you still matter? There's something rotten at the core of that. You see, when a man begins to chase, he's not just moving toward a woman, he's running away from something inside himself, from insecurity, from a lack of purpose, from the terrifying truth that maybe, just maybe, he hasn't built a life worthy of standing still in. So instead he runs into her, after her, hoping she'll be the answer to the question he's too afraid to ask. But let me be clear, no woman alive can answer the question of a man who hasn't faced himself. Now that might hurt to hear, and it should, because what's at stake isn't just your dignity, it's your identity. Chasing puts you in a subordinate psychological frame. You're no longer a force, you're a follower. You've become emotionally dependent on someone else's validation to define your self-worth. And that is a path to hell. In my clinical practice, I've seen this scenario play out thousands of times. A man loses himself in the pursuit of someone who doesn't value him because he hasn't yet learned to value himself. And then he wonders why he's disrespected, why he's ghosted, why he feels so small. It's because he is small psychologically. Not because he's weak, but because he's chosen weakness over strength in the name of emotional survival. But that survival is killing him. Contrast that with the man who doesn't chase. He doesn't disappear because he's indifferent. He disappears because he knows the cost of betraying his core values. He has standards. He has a direction. He has a spine. He's not going to beg for what he knows he brings immense value to. That's not arrogance. That's self-respect. Do you understand what I'm saying? Men must stop looking to women to heal their sense of inadequacy. That's not her job, that's your job. And it starts by stopping, by ceasing to run, by standing still in the chaos of rejection, in the quiet terror of silence, and asking, am I enough, even without her approval? Because if the answer is no, then you're not ready to be with anyone, not yet. The irony, of course, is this. The man who doesn't chase is the one who is chased. Why? Because his presence communicates value. His absence radiates mystery and depth. Because he's full. He doesn't need you to complete him. He's already whole. And that wholeness is magnetic. It's primal. It's what women instinctively respect. Not neediness, not pursuit, not desperation disguised as romantic effort. So stop chasing. Not because it's a strategy to get her back, but because you have better things to chase, like purpose, like discipline, like becoming the kind of man who doesn't have to ask for love because he commands it through his being. And if she walks away, let her. Because the man who stands still in the face of rejection is the one who will never be forgotten. Why is it that the moment a man stops trying, he becomes desirable? Let me tell you something difficult to swallow. Chasing is not romantic. It's desperate. And desperation at its core is repulsive. Why? Because it signals a lack of internal structure, a hollowed out self looking for scaffolding in another human being. You don't pursue her because you love her. You pursue her because you've abandoned yourself. And that is tragic. See, there's this lie, this modern fairy tale, that if you love someone, you prove it by relentless pursuit. But love without boundaries isn't noble, it's pathological. It's an addiction masquerading as devotion. And men fall into it precisely because they've never been taught that healthy love is not a performance. It's not begging for scraps. It's standing still with dignity. And yes, that takes more courage than chasing ever will. Now listen to me, really listen. The man who knows his value doesn't chase because he understands something crucial. You cannot inspire attraction through submission. You inspire it through sovereignty, through command of yourself. And when you abandon that sovereignty in order to gain favor, when you twist yourself into a shape you think she'll love, you lose the very thing that made you desirable in the first place. She left because you weren't enough. She left because you stopped being you. You see the tragedy in that? Relationships that begin with chasing often end in contempt. Why? Because the foundation is built on imbalance, on one person pursuing and the other withdrawing. That's not a bond, that's a trap. And it breeds resentment on both sides. She begins to question your confidence. You begin to resent her for needing her so badly. It's a slow psychological corrosion. And it always ends the same way, in collapse. But here's the contrast, and it's a powerful one. The man who refuses to chase, not out of apathy, but out of deep internal strength, he creates space, not distance, space. And in that space, something profound can happen. Respect, curiosity, desire. Because he's not forcing connection, he's allowing it to emerge organically. And that's the only kind of connection worth having. One built not on dependency, but on mutual recognition of worth. You might say, but what if I lose her? Good. If your absence doesn't matter, your presence never did. If her affection is contingent on you constantly proving, performing, and pleasing, then you've already lost her. You just haven't realized it yet. Stop auditioning for the role of man in her life. Start embodying it in your own. The world is full of men who've exhausted themselves trying to hold on to someone who was never looking for a partner, only a fan. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be respected. And you earn that not through pursuit, but through purpose, through mission, through being the kind of man who could walk away from anyone and still be complete. That's terrifying, isn't it? It should be, because it requires everything you've been avoiding, facing your loneliness, confronting your emotional dependency, rebuilding your self-image from the ground up. But here's the reward. When you finally stop chasing, you stop bleeding. You stop betraying yourself in the name of love. And when you stop betraying yourself, you start becoming someone truly powerful. Not because you're manipulating anyone, but because you're done manipulating yourself. So, here's the truth, and it's not soft. If she pulls away, let her. If she tests your boundaries, hold them. And if she walks, watch. Because the man who can hold his ground without flinching is the man she never forgets. Why do so many men lose themselves the moment they feel affection? It's one of the most brutal patterns I've seen, and it's more common than you'd like to admit. A man meets a woman. He feels alive for the first time in a long time. He sees possibility. He feels seen. And instead of standing in that truth and letting it evolve, he panics, he clings, he folds, he becomes whatever he thinks she wants, terrified to lose what he just found. And in that moment, right there, he begins to disappear. But here's the painful truth. The moment you abandon your principles to secure someone's presence, you've already guaranteed their departure. That isn't love. That's self-erasure. A masculine man doesn't compromise his identity to earn affection. He deepens it. He sharpens it. He becomes more of who he is, not less. But weak men, men without structure, men without purpose, they turn relationships into identity. They think love will fix the hole in their soul, But love, real love, only thrives when two whole people meet, not when one collapses into the other. What happens when you make a woman your meaning? You set her on a throne. And that seems romantic until you realize that it's not love you're offering, it's worship. And worship is not intimacy, it's suffocation. No woman wants to be the sole source of a man's self-worth. That's not attraction, it's pressure. And it slowly kills the relationship from the inside out. You think she'll love you more for being available 24/7, for saying yes to everything, for ignoring your values to avoid conflict? She won't. She'll start to question your backbone. She'll feel the emptiness behind your agreeableness. And eventually she'll feel something she can't even explain, revulsion. Because deep down she knows you're not showing up as a man, you're showing up as a reflection of her moods and preferences. And that's not strength, that's fear wearing a smile. Contrast that with a man who has built something inside himself, an identity rooted in discipline, purpose, and truth. When he enters a relationship, he's not seeking rescue. He's not outsourcing his emotional stability. He's bringing something to the table that's not conditional on her approval. And you know what happens then? She respects him. She leans into him. Not because he chased her, but because he didn't need to. He invited her into a reality already worth living in. Now let's be brutally honest here. Some of you have never even tasted that kind of power. You've spent your whole life trying to please others, believing that's what good men do. And sure, kindness matters, compassion matters, but not when it's disconnected from strength, not when it's a mask for your inability to say no. Because that no, that boundary, that refusal to betray your own soul just to keep someone else comfortable, that's where your masculine edge is born. And you need that edge. Not to dominate, but to protect your values, to protect your mission, to protect the integrity of the relationship itself. Because a relationship that demands your self-betrayal to survive is not a relationship. It's a slow spiritual death. So stop asking, what does she want from me? And start asking, what does truth require from me? And then live by that truth. Speak it. Stand in it. Even if it shakes the room. Because the woman who's truly meant for you won't run from your fire. She'll respect it. And if she does, let her walk. Because the man who refuses to dim his light for approval is the only kind of man who ever finds real love. Why do so many men believe that if they just love hard enough, sacrifice deep enough, and remain endlessly available, they will finally earn the respect they crave? It's tragic, it's a trap, and it's one of the most self-destructive lies a man can believe. Because the hard truth is, chasing respect never earns it, especially not in a relationship. The more you chase, the more you become invisible. And what's worse is you don't even see it happening until you've already disappeared. Men today have been conditioned to be agreeable, to keep the peace, to avoid conflict at all costs. They've been told strength is toxic, that boundaries are cruel, and that dominance is abusive. But listen, strength without discipline is toxic. Power without purpose is dangerous, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about moral sovereignty. I'm talking about the quiet, immovable presence of a man who refuses to bend the knee to emotional manipulation or psychological chaos. Now let's look at the consequences of ignoring this. When you suppress your instincts, deny your mission, and reduce your voice just to keep a woman from leaving, you are no longer a man in a relationship. You are a hostage in one. And here's the kicker. She will resent you for it. But because she's cruel, but because you've silently demanded that she carry the burden of leadership while you wither into passivity. Is that love? No. That's a betrayal of both people involved. There is a reason why a truly masculine man disappears when he's not being respected. Not out of spite, not as a game, but because he knows that staying in a space where he's being slowly dismantled is a violation of his own psychological integrity. A man like that doesn't threaten to walk away to gain power. He simply knows that power lies in his absence, in his willingness to remove his energy, attention, and presence from places where they are dishonored. And let's be clear, that disappearance isn't silence, it's a roar. It says, I will not be twisted into something I am not. It says, I choose growth over comfort, purpose over approval. That kind of man is dangerous, but not to women. He's dangerous to delusion. He's dangerous to dysfunction. He's dangerous to any dynamic that requires him to compromise his soul just to maintain proximity. Now, contrast that with the man who stays too long, stays too quiet, stays too agreeable. What happens to him? He decays. He resents. He explodes in all the wrong ways at all the wrong times. Or worse, he slowly fades into numbness. And she knows it. She feels it. She's not looking at a man anymore. She's looking at a shell. And the damage? It's generational. Sons watch, daughters learn. Patterns repeat. So let me ask you something hard. When was the last time you walked away from something that dishonored you? Not with rage, not with noise, but with clarity, with peace, with resolve. When was the last time your silence said more than your shouting ever could? You see, masculine men don't chase. They lead. And when leading isn't welcomed, they leave because they understand something vital. You cannot build a kingdom in the presence of someone who sees you as a servant. And that, right there, is the moment you wake up. Why do we always think love should feel easy? That it should be effortless, natural, like breathing? What a naive and dangerous belief. Because love, real love, structured, sacrificial, sustaining love, is not effortless. It's brutal. It exposes you. It carves you open. And it demands that you become something far greater than what you are now. You want to know why your relationships fail, why they leave you bitter, confused, and numb? It's not because love is broken. It's because you are. Because you haven't become someone who can hold the weight of something real. You're still addicted to the fantasy. You want passion without pain, depth without duty, intimacy without transformation. But here's the truth that most people can't handle. Immature people destroy good relationships, not because they're evil, but because they don't know how to carry love without dropping it. They don't know how to handle the responsibility of being seen, fully seen, and still showing up, still staying, still fighting. So what happens? They run. Or worse, they stay, but they stay shallow. They play it safe. They keep secrets. They manipulate. They self-protect. And then they wonder why their partner pulls away, why the fire dies, why the connection dissolves into silence. A weak relationship is a psychological prison. It's built on lies. Small ones at first. The lie of I'm fine when you're breaking. The lie of this doesn't bother me when it's eating you alive. The lie of pretending you're committed when really you're one hard moment away from bailing. You construct a version of yourself that your partner can love, not the real you, but the acceptable you, the agreeable you, the non-threatening you. And that right there is how love dies. Not with betrayal, not with some explosive collapse, but with compromise after compromise until you don't even recognize the person staring back at you in the mirror. Now flip that. Imagine you had the courage to be fully known. Not perfect, not invincible, but honest. Imagine you stopped hiding your flaws and instead made them fuel for growth. Imagine you sat across from your partner and said, here's who I am, here's where I bleed, but I will not lie to you, I will not manipulate you, I will not betray myself to keep you comfortable. That kind of truth, that's terrifying. But that's also where the real relationship begins, because intimacy, real intimacy, doesn't come from safety, it comes from bravery, from standing in front of someone emotionally naked and saying, I'm not here to play games. I'm here to build something that can survive the fire. You know what that requires? Discipline. Not emotion, not romantic impulse. Discipline. The discipline to show up when it's hard. The discipline to speak when it's uncomfortable. The discipline to own your shadow instead of projecting it onto your partner. And when both people do that, when both people agree to face the mirror every damn day and grow, even when it hurts, what you get is something almost sacred. You get a bond that doesn't break under pressure. You get a love that evolves, that matures, that lasts. So let me ask you this. Are you building a relationship, or are you playing dress up with someone's loneliness? Are you showing up as a warrior or as a ghost? Because if you're not growing together, you're rotting apart. And that's not love. That's slow mission self-destruction. You don't get the rewards of deep connection without the pain of deep excavation. And if that terrifies you, good. That means you're finally waking up. Because love isn't supposed to feel easy, it's supposed to make you better.